What's up? What's up? What's up? Thank you for tuning in to the Mortgage Pro podcast. This is our second episode, and as always, we have a very special guest. But first, my name is Braun. I'm your host. I started this podcast to give back to the mortgage industry. I always make the joke and say I'm in debt to this industry, pun intended, because it's changed my life. So this is my way of giving back, and I hope you guys find value from this podcast. Please remember to subscribe and share with all the mortgage pros you know. But our special guest on this episode is Arthur Most. Arthur Most actually is the CFO at the company that I work for, Contour Mortgage. And in this episode, we go over the whole story of how he took our company from 5 loan originators to 300 across the country, and all sorts of gems about running a business and dealing with people and employees and team members. But as always, I hope you guys find this episode valuable and enjoy. Today we have a very, very special guest. I'm looking forward to this time sitting down with you, Mr. Arthur Most. How are you?
Very good. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
No problem. So for everybody listening that doesn't know who you are, I always like to start off with like your origin story, because I always say, like, nobody plans on getting into the mortgage business. I don't know if that was your story.
No, very true.
Okay,
very true.
So how did you get into the business? How long have you been in the business? And then we'll talk about what you do now.
All right. Well, I'm an accountant by trade, so I went to school for accounting. I'm a CPA. I worked for a public accounting firm in Melville 10 years, and what we focused on was auditing mortgage brokers to help them become banks. So that was kind of my entryway into it. One of my clients that I helped go from a broker to a banker really wants me to come on board, and I just loved the energy of the company, and I just loved the enthusiasm. And again, comparing the accounting world to the mortgage world is like, it's not really even a fair comparison. It's just like, it's just night and day how much more like detailed and how much more opportunity I think there is in the mortgage field, as you can probably attest.
Well, yeah. I mean, the business has changed my life, and I know it's changed your life. And everybody listening to this, for the most part, are loan officers themselves. So I think everybody can agree with that. But so what was the transition like going from, now what did you do at that mortgage company? Were you also helping in the accounting department, or?
Yeah, so they were growing very quickly, and this is in early 2000, probably like 2004, I think it was, time frame. And it was just after the dot-com, like really the bubble burst, and then the housing industry started to just build and grow and take a lot of momentum. There's a lot of products that we don't talk about anymore, a lot of stated income. I don't even know if it was called subprime at the time, but they did like pay option arms and a lot of things that just kind of like taboo words now for the people who might not have been in the industry at the time, but heard about like certain things. So
yeah, I've only heard stories.
Yeah,
funny.
It was. I was a fish out of water. So what I did was I did a lot of the accounting, but what was my real interest was the business as a whole. So it wasn't just about the numbers. I think what I attracted to this industry was the people. There's a lot of stories. There's a lot of personalities. A lot of strong personalities. And what I always found that I didn't ever get overwhelmed by people like celebrity figures. When I'm impressed by a lot of people, but I always found that I could just talk to people and just get to know people, and I just built bonds very early on on the public side. When I was in public accounting, which is why I got to know a lot of the clients.
Right.
And then that's why the transition over was pretty smooth.
Right. Now, so when did you do anything after that? Before what you're doing now, which I want to talk about, obviously, but
no, I mean, I think I've only been at 4 companies in 30 years.
Wow.
And that's why I don't believe in change unless there's a real need for a change. So what I did was, I think I do the same thing I did always in my 30 years. I just do it a little differently. I think you go through levels of your career, and the way you look at things and the way you handle situations now versus 15, 20, 30 years ago, it's very, very different.
Right. So the business doesn't change, but you do. Or does the business change as well?
I think it's a cyclical business. Right. So the irony is that it's kind of the same cycles, but this is a very quick cycle, which we'll maybe touch on a little bit. But I think the business is the business in the sense that you're helping homeowners and you're really creating like the ideal situation for them. So that's really what initially attracted me, was the people that are just very entertaining, and really having a product that helps people.
Right.
Whereas like, if you had like back in like the 1970s, Polaroid cameras were like the biggest rage.
Right.
I wouldn't want to be Polaroid now because maybe there's a retro couple cameras, but like it was not really something that people needed.
Right.
Now, and then you always need home ownership.
Gotcha. So the sustainability, even though like you said it's cyclical, but just the fact that everybody's going to need a home, and you get to help people do that. And now, touching base on I don't want to touch base on it. I really want to dive into this because this is one of the reasons I wanted to sit down with you. But what you're doing now, let's talk about that. What is your official title? I know you're not a titles person like we spoke about off the air, but what's your official title?
I'm actually the head cook here. No, I'm kidding. I'm still, I keep the Chief Financial Officer title. It's always been near and dear to my heart. And when I did move over from public into private accounting, which was at BLS Funding, which became Top Dot Mortgage, I said to the owner at the time, I said, I'm not a CFO, but I want to be one.
Gotcha.
So it wasn't even about compensation, it was about opportunity. So I said, I just want the title. So he gave me the title out of the gate, and from there, I think I grew into the role. And my goal is to never, I'm always going to be a financial person at heart. I think it's just kind of who I am. And when you've been doing it for a long time, it's a passion of yours. So that's why I love that title.
Yeah, and I think you're downplaying it a little bit, because what you do right now, I mean, so for those of you who don't know, I work at Contour Mortgage. I've been here for 7 years? 7 years, something like that. We came over.
Time's flying.
I would say #1 Long Island-based mortgage company by a long shot. I'm gonna brag a little bit.
Okay, good.
All right,
yeah.
so you don't.
I don't. Yeah.
So and Arthur here is the managing director, and one of the main reasons we came aboard, although I didn't really understand what was happening at the time because I was so new in the business, was you and the people that worked here. Because as some of our listeners know, it's very hard to find good leadership at a mortgage company, unfortunately. Like you said, there's strong personalities in this business, and that it could be strong in a good way or strong in a not so good way. And I'm not mentioning names or companies, but it is very hard to find. And when you find it, you stay.
Yeah.
So and you were a big part of the reason, if not the reason, that we came over here and started that whole journey 7 years ago. And to see what you've done to the company since then, and even before we got here, is a really cool story. So talk about Contour, where we're at today as a company, and your journey so far as that CFO, but also managing director.
Wow, that's a lot of open topic points. But I think looking at Contour today, and I think what we've been about is it has been about the people. And it's almost like we're on a journey, and as you're going like from town to town, it just feels like we're just amassing people that are good people who really want the same thing. So when you surround yourself with like-minded philosophy type individuals, it's almost easier to kind of do what I do. And now what's nice about today, as opposed to 8.5 years ago, when I first got here, we have a lot of momentum. Because it's not me, it's all of us. And again, we probably have, I think, some of the best, mortgage professionals, not just on the sales side, but even on the operations support side in the industry. And, obviously I'm going to be a little biased. It's just like everyone thinks their kids are the best at sports, although my kids are not good at sports. But for the most part, it really comes down to where are we going and where do we want to go. And I always envisioned running a company that just didn't want to do what everyone else did. So I wanted to kind of be like a dolphin in a sea of sharks. And the nice thing about that is when you are like that, people really are gravitating to this company. And as I mentioned, we were talking a little bit before, We don't have a recruiter in this company. We don't want a recruiter. We want good people who word of mouth, referral based. Because my philosophy, one of my many philosophies, is good people know good people. So if you come across somebody, I just want to support to help bring those people on board, because what ends up happening is that now they're part of us and they're part of what we're doing. And when they grow as a professional and they learn and they develop, it just makes Contour, that image and the brand, even that much better.
Right.
And that's something that when you talk about where we're going with this, is I think the sky's the limit. I think that there's a lot of small brokers and banks that kind of take like a very small market share in a local market, a very tight bandwidth area. And then there's the large companies that, again, nameless, that they really don't care about the customers. It's just about numbers. It's just like, how many loans can we close this month? And what's nice, even though I'm a numbers person, I think the people make the numbers. So when, along that regard, as we go and we add the right people, we are getting the numbers, but we're keeping that bandwidth tight, that we're giving the local, the borrowers and the local communities and the homeowners, we're giving them really great service, great rates.
Right.
And that's the secret, is just keep doing that over and over and over again. Because the other thing about this industry that's really great is that there's always turnover. If you think about it, if you move once every, let's say even 15 years, then that means that every house, like there's, one of every 15 houses on the market in a year.
Right.
So that's kind of the way, when you look at the numbers, there's a natural turnover that happens in life as people, they get married, they have children, they want to upgrade, then they
get divorced.
Well,
God forbid.
Yeah, I mean, I was trying to keep it like on a nicer where, the kids move off to college and then they want to downsize,
Right.
but there's realities of life,
Right.
and to your point, absolutely, and being there to serve all of the customers at the different points of their life,
Right.
and there's nothing that makes me happier than when, there's there's some people who've been in the industry in this company for a long time, so even if they weren't here but they've been in the industry, they say, I did their parents' loan,
Right.
and now
Right.
their children are doing the loans, and to buying a house, and again, it just makes you feel like good, because there is, even though this industry has a lot of challenges, there's a lot of great people in this industry, and there's a lot of great things that we do for people, creating the home ownership dream.
I think the product that we sell is priceless, which when I first started to take business seriously, and I was going to seminars and I was listening to podcasts like this, and I was trying to learn, and I understood there's another level that I can get to in life. One of the questions that I asked myself is, all right, before I go and double down on the mortgage business, what else is out there?
Yeah.
And I thought about it, and no other product does what we sell, quote unquote sell, right? You could go sell cars, but nobody likes a car salesman. You could do insurance, but that sounds pretty bad too. Or you can help people achieve home ownership, and it's not like a product that I have to go out there and convince you to take. It's just, I have to just convince you that I'm the best option, which I also think is a good position. And then I am going to ask you at the end, because I'm asking all of our guests this, what you love about the business. So I don't want you to answer that yet, but I'll answer it on my end. What I love about this business is, after you get, all right, here's the product, here's what it can do, obviously become passionate about it, then there's a million ways to skin the cat. And whether it's you want to go consumer direct or referral based, whether you want to go after individual agents or realtors or broker owners, how do you market to those people? Is it social media? Is it a podcast like this? Then there's also team building. Like, do you have an assistant that handles applications and is licensed, or do you have an assistant that helps you with paperwork? Or do you have a processor that's a hybrid? Or there's so many different ways. And one of the reasons that I started this podcast is to just learn from everybody on what they're doing, what's working, and obviously give that information to our listeners. So I couldn't agree with you more about not only like the power of the industry that we're in, but also the other side of it, like I'm mentioning, like the building the business aspect, which I know you also are no stranger to. So I want to talk about that a little bit. When you came aboard to Contour, what was the head count? Like, how many loan officers did Contour have, and now where are we at today? Because I want the listeners. I want the listeners to know, like, you know, who we're sitting down with. I'm gonna pull the bragging out of you.
Okay.
All right.
So I think we had about 4 LOs
At the start.
At the start, and this was May of 2014. We had about 8 ops people, and you know, I said it was just one day at a time, focusing on each person, and then kind of, you know, growing. So now I think we have about 295 licensed mortgage professionals, and you know, and if anything, we're slowing down the growth because right now a lot of people want to come to the company because of our brand and our reputation. Again, even your reputation. I mean, you know, people know who you are, and when I meet with people, they're like, oh, you know, Eric Braun's there. So it's really very comforting for me, and that's why, you know, it's really just coming to work every day with a plan and saying, what am I trying to do today? The irony is I come to work with a plan every day and I never end up working on what I want to work on, but I work on what needs to be worked on. So I might walk in one morning and, you know, there's a challenge in pretty much any department. It could be, you know, it could be, hey, can you meet this person? Or, hey, we have an issue on a file. Or, you know, there's a challenge on a loan that's not paying. It could be anything. And that's, I think, what I've loved about this is that the same way that you could build your business any way you want, it's kind of like I'm always challenged every single day. And it's similar cycles, but it's never the same exact situation twice.
Right.
So that's why I always kind of go back to my principles of, you know, what is the right thing to do? What is the best course of action, not just for myself, and I don't really look at it from my perspective or even Contour's perspective, but I think all parties. And then that's always helped me, I feel, make the right decision, and then communicating the decision with each other, getting everyone to buy into what we want to do and why we want to do it. And again, it could be something where 2 people are fighting over a loan, for instance. You know, usually someone's going to not walk away completely happy, but what I found is if you discuss it and you get on the same page and you communicate, you could work through that. So that's why we talk about, like, and I definitely did jump off topic, but, you know, we talk about, like, the day-to-day and the motivations and the challenges. This is a great industry for that because you never get bored.
Right.
You know, and you were talking about building your business in particular.
You're a firefighter. You know, like, you're just constantly putting out fires. And as a loan officer, I know what I deal with every day. As somebody who runs a mortgage company, I can only imagine what you're dealing with. Which leads me to a topic that I did want to touch on as well. So it's funny because I'm at the point now where we're growing in division. You know, we have a good team of loan officers. We have our own processing staff, our own operations. We're working on marketing. So I'm starting to understand that there's, like, not only, like, just the sales issues, but there's also the operations issues, and then there's also the marketing issues, and then there's also, you know, internal conflict. One employee is not feeling another employee, and but I have it at my scale, which is at a lot smaller scale to you. So how do you deal with the problems? And you kind of touched on it. You talked about your principles and stuff like that, but how do you deal with all of the problems all at once while still maintaining the ability to go out and build the business and grow?
Well, I think they're interrelated, ironically, because if you can address a campfire before it becomes a forest fire, it's a lot easier to put out a lot of campfires. So that's a little my philosophy, and I think a lot of people in my position, they have to pick one of two directions. They either care or they don't care. Sorry about that. So when you don't care, it's easy to deal with the noise because you don't hear it. You're blocking it out. You put your headphones on, and you know, you sit in your ivory tower, as they say, and you just go about your business, and you don't let the distractions distract you.
Right.
Fortunately or fortunately, I don't know which one it is. I think it's fortunately. I care, and I care so much it hurts. So
Right.
because of that, I think I can address things with people because I build a one-on-one bond with, I think, everyone here. I mean,
Right.
I love seeing people, but that's, I think, my strategy for dealing with it is, address something early, don't let it fester, and that's a lot easier to address it, before it gets out of hand. And then I free up more of my time in my day to address more issues and challenges. But a lot of what I kind of joke, and I used to call myself the speed bump remover, because if you think about it, like if you're driving down the road and there's a speed bump, what do you got to do?
Slow down.
You got to slow down. So if I remove all the speed bumps, everyone can just go at full speed, do what they need to do. So I kind of joke about it, but the reality is, that's a lot of what someone in leadership's role is
Right.
to allow the people around them to work at
flourish.
max capacity.
Right.
I
do like that campfire example. I think I'm a big advocate for, like, if there's a conflict, let's handle it now.
Mm-hmm.
I do not like, even whether it's dealing with somebody as an individual or it's like a problem with the file.
Mm-hmm.
If there's a problem, I do not let it linger. That's like one
Smart.
of my
Really
laws.
smart.
Because the longer it goes, the worse it gets. More problems come from it.
Mm-hmm.
So I almost do that to a fault, because I'll annoy the crap out of everybody on that email chain until I get a solution. Because some people don't even know it's a problem yet, but I see it coming, and I want to solve it before it's even here. But I do like that campfire example, and I also like the way you put, like, you have two decisions: you care or you don't care. I never thought of it. I think we think similar in that regard, but I've never thought of it that way. And that's actually one thing that I always say to, whether we're bringing on a loan officer or, we're hiring somebody for a processing role. It's like, I can talk about, like, the technology that we have and the marketing support and the support on the files, but, like, behind all of that, what you need to know is that everybody that's involved in this process cares. Every single person. They care about you. They care about your borrower. They care about the realtors on the transaction. And sometimes that's to a fault, because it gets us stressed and emotional, and because we care so much. And I think that's very, very hard to build if leadership doesn't care. If everybody has this nonchalant attitude of, like, nah, it'll resolve itself, or there's more realtors out there, let's screw up this file. Like, if everybody has that from the top down, that's what most mortgage companies are.
Yeah, true.
Again, not knocking. I know there's a lot of good companies out there as well, so I want to make that clear. But I think it's very apparent that everybody cares. The underwriters, everybody, operations management. You have people. Our processors are, and again, it's to a fault. Like, some of them are in here till 10 o'clock at night. Do we want that? No. Do we tell them to do that? No.
No, most of the time we don't. We tell them to go home.
Yeah, go home.
Now with remote working, you can't monitor if they're working late
Please
hours.
go home. Please turn off the computer. But it comes down to that care. So that's something that me and Mike always talk about. But it's interesting that you put it that way. Now, when it comes to operations, let's say, so with your background, did you find it easier to build sales or build operations?
I think for some reason I gravitate to sales more. I just, because I work backwards, so I have certain philosophies, and one of my philosophies, and then I'll answer the question more. But my philosophy is, if you're planting like crops or some kind of, like, tomatoes, whatever, you need to have a lot of factors in place. You need to have the right dirt, the right soil, fertilizer, water it, make sure it gets sunlight, make sure the elements don't get to it, because, again, even high winds can, like, knock over a tomato plant. So when it ties back into sales or ops, I think you need the right environment on both. So while I gravitate, I think, more to sales because I understand how challenging it is, because of the, there's mantras like, you're only as good as your last loan. while not exactly true, it's not completely untrue. There is
Right.
definitely some
Truth to it.
moniker of truth to it.
Right.
And so again, I think to answer your question specifically, I think it's easier to build sales because I think salespeople know what they need more. So I think sales are looking for, like, they're looking for unlimited potential, and that's really what I like when I meet people. I want someone who wants to, like, when I meet somebody, I say, how many loans do you want to close in a month? And they go, well, here's my W-2. Here's what I close. I go, I don't care what you did.
Right.
What do you want to do?
Right.
What do you want to build? How do you want to do it? Because I don't want to tell somebody, but if they say, look, I want to close 1 or 2 loans a month, and that's my ceiling. Look, you might close 1 or 2 loans a month sometimes, but if that's what your goal is, that's your ceiling. So they're setting a ceiling. When someone says, look, I want to close 10 loans, I want to do this, I want to build, I want to open up an office, I want to have people under me, I want to teach. That's kind of, again, the type of individual I think that I gravitate very, very well with.
Right.
Somebody who, like I said, wants to keep going in their career, and then they don't look at this as they don't look at this as a job, they look at it as a career. And this is a career. I mean, I'm 30 years in this industry now.
Right.
This is a career.
Right.
I have a long way to go, but 30 years in is.
What is the goal for you? Whether it's you want to give your short term or your long term.
Well, I think short term, unfortunately, is let's come out on the other side, because I think that with the pandemic, it was too good for a certain amount of time. Now we're kind of getting the inverse of that. So we're getting a little too rough for a certain period of time. So I think being very strong on the other side and really looking for opportunities right now, which we're seeing. I mean, we're seeing a lot of people who are just underserved. And I feel that when this market turns, it turns rather quickly. And that's part of the cycle. Like, this last cycle was very, very quick uptick where rates more than doubled inside of 12 months, which probably even like 8 months, which is almost unheard of.
Right.
From anything I've seen, even my 30 years. But so going back to it is, I think the short-term goal is really focusing on the fundamentals of what got us here, because what happened this past year in 2022, it wasn't that we did something wrong. It was just that the industry worked so hard against us.
Right.
And knowing that kind of keeps you like focused on point, because I think there's going to be a tremendous amount of growth potential on the other side, where you mentioned, like, we're probably one of the top, if not number one lender on Long Island. I think from our brand standpoint, we are, without a doubt. I think from our quality of individuals, we are. And it's really maintaining that hometown feel, pushing out to all the ends of the island, like, go out all the way out east, and then, keep growing into areas surrounding us, like the Connecticut, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, just kind of growing that way. Different companies have different philosophies of growth. I like organic growth. So when you look back on the last 8.5 years, it's meeting the right people at the right time, supporting them, and then helping them develop, and then they attract more people. So I guess, long story short, I'm not looking to change what we're doing, because I think what we're doing is right on point with the way that we want to grow and that we want to be. Because I never want to just hire like a group of people with 100 people, and then all of a sudden they're like the flavor of the month. The people that got us here and have put their time in and day out, those are the most important people to me.
Right.
The new person has to kind of prove themselves. So I always joke, I said it's like pledging a fraternity or a sorority.
Right.
So I always tell new people, like, well, where's the red carpet? I go, you'll get that next year.
Yeah.
And
Stay,
they're like,
stay a while.
Yeah, like this is opposite. I go, this is the way it should be.
Right.
And respecting the people that helped to build this name of the company and the strength of the company. When you forget that is when I think you start to weaken as a company. So when, again, going to longer term goals, this is in my blood, this is my passion. I'm not going anywhere.
And I think you spoke about what we're going through as an industry right now. Let me just ask you this clear, direct question. Is it a good time to be an owner? Because some will say no because of what's going on, and then there's also the other argument of like the opportunity at the other side. You spoke about short term, trying to just continue doing what we're doing, and
I think that's the reality of it, is that when you sign up for something, you either are in or you're not in. So when you go full force and full throttle ahead, so I guess it's almost an irrelevant question, because this is what we do, and this is what I do, and my passion has always been about supporting people. So I don't really think about as
Whether
much
it's
as like
a good time or not.
Yeah,
It's just, you're just showing up to do your job.
yeah, and supporting everybody because everyone still has bills to pay, and the stress that I feel is not my personal stress, not my I don't have financial stress, but somebody who just got married or just bought a house or just had a baby, they have new stresses in their life, and this market might not align well with their needs.
Right.
And that's the challenge. And again, there's been a lot of operations people displaced.
Right.
There's been a lot of salespeople who are making less than 50% of what they made the last couple of years. So again, is it a good time or bad time to be those people?
Right.
Is kind of the way I look at it. And I think it's just a challenging time where good people and good companies band together, get through it together, and then build on the other side.
And what would you say to the loan officer that is making 50% of what they were making, or 60%, or they took a big hit, whatever the number is? What would you say to them right now?
I would say, make sure you're aligned with the right people around you, that they're giving you the support, because this market will turn. So don't get out of the industry, especially if you're still somewhat successful. But just make sure you're aligned with the right people and you have the right structure in place, because what the risk is mediocrity. So when the rates come back down to a level where volume picks up to like the average, like the average level, you might get stuck back in mediocrity where now you're making a couple dollars more than you were making, but it's still not what you should be doing. So I think that's what I would tell to loan officers now is make sure that you have what you want in life lined up, and make sure you're in the right company to help achieve that.
And one of the things that I feel that there's more of a push towards in the industry as a whole, even as a loan officer to a realtor, there's been a big push for like creating relationships that are not one-way streets. That's something that I've always preached. I've been saying add value to your referral partners before it's became like a trendy thing. But I think that what's also happening on the larger scale is companies are starting to realize like adding value to the loan officers is also like part of the secret.
Yeah.
So what would you think a company at the bare minimum should be offering loan officers nowadays as far as value, not as far as compensation or anything like that? 'Cause
Yeah.
that's all, that's all not rocket science, but go ahead.
I think opportunity is the best word. If you don't feel that you have opportunity where you're at, you're probably at the wrong spot. So can you grow? Can you create new relationships? And a lot of it is getting the tools and resources. So do you have a social media platform? Do you have CRMs? Do you have like automation to take things? Do you have support around you, LOAs? And do you have those tools? Because if you have to do everything from A to Z, you can only do A to Z like a couple times.
Right.
But if you only have to do B, C, and D, you could do that many more times and cycle through that faster. So that's really where I think the opportunity comes in, is the opportunity for you to do what you do best. And so going back to an earlier question, like what you enjoy about the industry, what I enjoy about what my day is that I like when there's no problems. So like I have an open door policy, but I love when my door's open and nobody needs me other than saying hi and walking by.
Right.
So I think that's kind of what I think I would recommend to people to look forward to, is look for the right place that will support what you need to grow and develop, because there's so much. I think what I find a lot of people do is they're dreamers, but they don't understand how to get to that dream.
Right.
Whereas I'd rather be making a vision and saying, hey, here's what I have to do. And that's a lot of what I'll do with salespeople is I'll work with them and say, how do you get there? What are some of the steps you want to do? So if you want to close 10 loans a month, for instance, there's a strategy. You have to do something. So let's say if you're realtor based, you need a certain number of realtors and you need to have touch points with those realtors that interact. They also have to be primarily, either buyers, agents, or if they're listing agents, you have to do open houses.
Right.
You have to meet clients at the open houses. So there's different ways, and you'll see that some people are not willing to take steps back in their career. Some people who are saying, look, I'm not going to do open house anymore. I've been in this for 20 years. It's beneath me. So the other thing I say with that, then with salespeople, is be willing to roll up your sleeves again. I think that that's the environment we're in right now.
People forgot how to work. I'm not
They're
saying
working
our people.
different. They're
I'm
working
not saying
different.
our people. I'm saying
No. I think
general.
in general, I think technology's made the role a little different, and
Right.
I think the pandemic, with the refi business, made it where you couldn't have face-to-face interaction. You couldn't go out to open houses. You really had to like kind of figure out a different way of doing it. And I give people credit because they, many people. I mean, they did an amazing job throughout the pandemic. It's just in today's day and age that doesn't work. So you have to get up out of your chair, and not just have the opportunity come to you. So I'm landing the plane with that, but you have to seek out the opportunity. So you have to have a plan to get that.
I think a lot of people are just waiting for the phone to ring, and it's when rates are not at 2%, it's not going to ring the same way. And I think I'm at open houses. I'm sealing up new relationships. I'm hosting monthly workshops. I have my semi-annual event that I do. It's some of the stuff I continue to do throughout the pandemic, or it's not new, but there is stuff that I'm getting back to basics is one thing that I just keep hearing in the real estate space, whether you're a realtor or a loan officer. So my advice for anybody that took a hit or is worried or doesn't feel the momentum that they're feeling right now is just like get back to basics. Think about how you can make the phone ring and do those things. There's tons of different ways, and that's not that's a whole podcast within itself. But now, as one of the articles that I was reading the other day, and I'm completely switching gears, but that's just how my mind works. It was the cost of origination. It was an article from Housing Wire where like the cost of origination for mid-sized mortgage company is like $10,000 a loan or something like that. Can you speak as with your financial background? Like, I know there's been a big push within the MBA to try and combat that in any way possible. How do you?
A lot of meetings. A lot of meetings. A lot of it is workflow. So if you have a proper workflow down, you can minimize the cost to originate a file. What I find is when people are on autopilot is when the cost of a file increases dramatically. So a file comes in, it gets kicked around, it circles the block 3 times, and you're spending countless hours without really achieving something. So that's where the workflow comes in. As long as that file is constantly moving forward to the finish line, you can keep your costs relatively low. There's a double-edged sword with technology these days. You can be more efficient, but you can also be
more costly
and very involved. Like you almost like find out too much information about properties and details, and the borrower was late like 16 years ago on a credit card statement. And it's like, but we know it now, so we can't unsee it. And so I think to combat the cost of origination, I think you just have to really focus on, and maybe let's use originators as a good example. I work for somebody who, he said, look, if I want to close 100 loans a month, I want 100 people. I said, well, why would you want 100 people to each do one loan? I said, they're not making any money. He's like, well, if I lose a couple of them, I don't care. I said, well, I'd rather have 10 people doing 10 loans, because what you can do is you can keep your cost to originate down. So it ties kind of in the same thing with the operations side, where if you know what you're doing and you're not checking the guidelines every 3 minutes, and you're not like just making up your own rules and challenges, you can keep your costs originate down. You just have to focus on removing redundancies in particular and ineffective channels.
The 100 people doing 100 loans versus 10 people doing 100 loans, that speaks to like you definitely seek out quality. It's not like you're accepting everybody. I shouldn't say it that way, but it's not like you want everybody, right? You want good people. Can you speak to like, how do you find good talent? I know you said through attraction, organic, good people know good people, but like maybe use an example of like how you found your last good person or a good story.
Okay. Well, I'm going to think about that. So I did want to touch on the philosophy, of people coming on board. There might be somebody who's doing one loan a month, but wants to grow. And again, we use 10 as like, 1 in 10 is placeholders. in this industry, if you're doing two to three loans a month, you're probably very like a decent originator. Obviously, on a referral side, you're right there.
Right.
The direct to consumer, you probably have to do 3 to 4
Right.
in a month to kind of combat that. But it's just it's hard to explain. But I think through realtor partners and through friends and I'll give you an example of somebody I met years ago. So we have somebody here that had a friend, Mike McHale, and he was at a different mortgage bank. And I used to joke with Matt. I'm like, hey, Matt, when can I meet Mike? Because he's mentioned, he's like, hey, you heard about Contour? And, they were doing some changes where his company was getting acquired by another company. So he wasn't really sure if it was going to last there. And he liked the name that they had. So I used to send him a picture. Like I took a picture of Starbucks one time, sent it to Matt, said, hey, Matt, when can I meet Mike? I want to meet him at the Starbucks.
Right.
So we met there, and we just hit it off. And that's why what I try to do is I try to get to know somebody. I try to get a face-to-face. So when I hear about somebody who's good, because you hear the names, who's successful in the industry. I mean, you see them on social media or, they're the competition.
Right.
What my philosophy is, if you can't beat them or join up, and kind of work as a coalition, because there's so much market share for everybody on Long Island. And so again, going back to the question, it's really, I don't really have any one way of meeting people. It could just be almost a random happenstance where someone's in a bad mood and they call their friend and or know their wife or something weird happens. So it's really being patient and really determining, is it the right person and is it the right time for them? Because that's the other thing, is that timing. So that's probably the one secret I have. With time, things kind of work themselves out.
That's something that I'm realizing now as we're trying to grow and bring on the right people. It's about timing. Sometimes you hit it off with somebody, but it's just not the right time.
Yeah, and that's okay.
How do you follow up with them?
Oof.
Is it a little bit of harassment, or is it?
No, I don't believe in the harassment. I think and I'm so bad, I don't really follow up that well with people. If anything, I'm kind of aloof.
Right.
But I always leave it where I say, look, I'm not going to pester you. I'm not going to bug you. We met. I'm appreciative of that. I met with somebody this morning. We had a great meeting. Thank you so much. I'd love to meet again.
Right.
And I leave it at that. And then if they call me next week in 3 days, it's good.
I think that comes down to you having you being secure in of what you're offering and what we have here. So you don't need to go chase anybody. Similar to the way I sit down with a realtor.
Yeah.
When I sit down with a realtor, it's not like I'm gonna call him for freaking 6 weeks and I have some follow-up campaign or whatever it is. It's like I said what I needed to say.
Yep.
And I know what I bring to the table, and it comes down to if they're a good fit and if I'm gonna like working with them, et cetera, as well. But that I can see that similarity.
And then my closing line is always, give me 2 hours to meet in the morning, and then I'll double your income. So that kind of helps too. But
yeah, you throw that in there.
Yeah, but a lot of what I find in sales and why I'm so enthralled by salespeople in general is they have the gift of potential. They look at it and they say, I can do anything. And it's almost like reverse psychology where, I'm like, well, what can you do? And then they're like, I can do anything. I'm like, well, what's anything? And then they start talking about it and they almost visualize it in that regard. So that's why I feel that, I don't have any set method for meeting people, but when I meet the right person, I think I kind of know.
Gotcha. You have a barometer for talent. You
quality people.
Quality
okay. People. Now,
Gotcha.
I don't know. Look, talent is very...
There's talent that isn't quality as well.
Correct.
Yeah. I know a few of those.
Yeah, and that's why one of the questions I never ask anybody is, what's your volume? Ever.
Right.
Because it doesn't matter.
Right.
It's irrelevant for my purposes. It's what do I think that individual can do here at Contour?
Gotcha.
Are they going to be a good fit? Are they going to be somebody that's going to do what they want to do? Because a lot of people say they want to do a lot of things, but are they willing to put the time in? Are they willing to, the repetition? Like for instance, with your social media. I remember 5-6 years ago we kind of joked like, oh, podcast day in Eric's office, or and again, just the evolution of that has been very impressive from my perspective.
They called my office the content cave, and everybody was like, oh, he's doing content again. He's doing content again. So yeah, but one of the things that I actually your friend Pete last night when I saw him. He, for those of you who don't know, Pete Morris, he owns Signature Premier Properties, the largest, or one of the largest real estate brokerages in Long Island. I was like, we were having a conversation about something, and I was like, yeah, I mean, it's clear you guys know what you're doing. And his response to that was like, do we? he's like, do we know what we're doing, or do we just treat our people good? And I immediately thought of you.
Yeah.
So I'm.
Pete and I have known each other for probably about 6.5 years now. And from day one, he's very different than me. He's funnier than me. He's definitely charismatic, but again, we kind of click really well.
I met him for the third time last night. He left and he said, "Nice meeting you."
Well, I'll tell you a trick though. One of the things I learned, somebody told me this years ago. So this is for the listeners too. Don't ever say "nice to meet you." Always say "nice to see you."
Right.
Because, you'd be surprised. Like
you might have met him before.
You might have met him before,
Yeah.
and you might not remember it, but that's something that they're like, oh, I met you before. So that's why I never say nice to meet you, nice to see you.
I'm gonna start doing that.
It works. It definitely works, and Well, yeah.
But I appreciate your time. I know you're a busy guy, and you're somebody that I look up to, and I've been a part of the journey as long as I've been a part of the journey, 6-7 years. I'm proud to work here. I think there's no real other place that has what we have, talking about caring for people, opportunity, creative control, and just being around good people.
Yeah.
Larger size, but still feels like a family. So that's something that I admire about you and everybody that works here. So I appreciate your time.
Yeah. Well, I have one question for you,
Go
but
ahead.
I just want to say one thing, in closing for that is you make it easy, and that's what I really appreciate about it is that, I don't go home at night wondering like where are people's heads. I know the industry's tough right now, and I know people are struggling, but I know that we all have a unified goal. And what's nice about here in particular is that people are not taking realtors from each other, not taking borrowers from each other. It's not even a factor. We have rules of engagement, but it's not even necessary because it's just like it's like unspoken rules. But so my one question for you, just to throw it back on you a little bit. I know this is a podcast, but just more on the social media side. What is your favorite thing about social media?
I think it's the ability to. So I love people. I'm similar. I was at a point in my life 6-7 years ago when I kind of just started in the mortgage business. It had nothing to do with getting started with the mortgage business, but that did help me in this decision, where I was asking like all of life's most meaningful questions, like what's the point, and why am I here, and what's the true meaning of life, and like I was at that point
At a very early age too.
Well, yes, and there's a whole story behind that. Maybe I'll share that with the listeners one day. But I was at that point, and after kind of asking myself like, what do I truly love? And the only answer that I like. Yeah, my identity up until that point was like, yeah, I liked cars, and I loved girls, and I loved whatever I loved, right, quote unquote. But like, strip down all that like fake, superficial stuff. It was people, and then social media was like a no-brainer for me because it allowed me to communicate with people at scale. So if my goal and my job is to tell people that essentially that's what we do as salespeople. We tell people what we do, and hopefully they remember us. If you want to really boil it down, right? So, in my eyes, the best way to do that in this day and age, going back for many years now, is to consistently not just like surf social media, but engage and post and be on the platform. So it just comes down to loving people, and then also just trying to communicate with people at scale. And what is it has allowed me to do things like this. It has allowed me to meet people that I would have never otherwise met. There's every major city in the country, I can confidently say I'm able to grab dinner with somebody that I've never met.
Wow.
But if I put up a story and was like, I'm in wherever, let's grab dinner.
Wow.
I'm 80% sure.
Okay.
Most cities.
Well, that's 80% more than me.
But that's where it all started with social media with me, and then you do cool crap like this, and it's like a no-brainer to keep doing it.
Yeah, no, I love it. All right, again, thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you for sitting down today. It was a pleasure.
All right, thanks, Eric. Keep it up.